Welcome to the Health Trip Podcast. My name is Jill Foose. I'm a functional medicine and integrative nutrition health coach. I created this podcast to bring you along as we travel down intriguing, science-packed roads, debunking old medical paradigms and perusing new innovative therapies and modalities with the finest functional medicine doctors, practitioners, and like-minded biohackers while living our best life. Enjoy the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on the Health Trip Podcast. It's Hair Loss Awareness Month, and I'm all in when it comes to my hair loss journey and educating you about hair loss. There are many causes of hair loss, and it often involves stress, whether it's caused by chemotherapy or by multiple causes such as genetics and eating a poor diet. Stress is involved in the equation. Stress can trigger or worsen different types of hair loss. Telogen effluvium is a type of hair loss that involves rapid shedding of hair over a short period of time, usually a few months after a stressful event. It occurs when significant stress pushes hair follicles into a resting or telogen phase and can be caused by physical or emotional stressors, hormonal changes, or other factors. Menopause is stressful. Midlife women experience a vast array of physiological symptoms that create a stressful life. Up to 70% of postmenopausal women will experience hair loss, hair thinning, the widening of their part, or a receding hairline. While just managing your stress alone may not bring back your hair to where you'd like it to be, it is really important to have strategies that work for you. Today, my guest and I are going to deep dive into stress, and she is going to make sure that you walk away with a variety of golden nuggets to support managing stress in your life, whether it's hair loss, weight gain, figuring out an exercise routine, or optimizing your sleep. Dr. Tricia Pingle, aka the Adrenal Whisperer, is a leading naturopathic physician who specializes in stress and cortisol management. She has transformed and empowered countless women, guiding them from feeling wired and tired to a state of calm and connection. She's been featured in publications like Mind Body Green and Prevention Magazine. Dr. Pingle is a best-selling author, a hip-hop dancer, a retired fashion model, and a visionary CEO shaping the future of holistic wellness. Since learning that she was one of the 80% of adults who suffered from adrenal fatigue, Dr. Pingle has educated women about the impact stress has on common conditions and symptoms. She has helped thousands fix their adrenals and return to their happy, vibrant, and energetic selves. Just a short medical disclaimer before we dive in. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice or to make any lifestyle changes to treat any medical condition in yourself or others. Consult your physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any of my guests on my podcast. So sit back, open your mind, and let's dive into managing stress. Hi, Dr. Tricia. Welcome to the Health Trip Podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here too, because I have not devoted a podcast episode to just stress. And I'm a midlife woman. I am postmenopausal. I mean, stress is our middle name when we get to this phase of life, right? But I do want to start with that you are known as the Adrenal Whisperer. And I need to know where this name came from and how you got it.
Yeah, it was a long time coming. It's amazing how many experiences you have to go through before you're like, oh, wow, that's what I do. But I'm just like you. I'm midlife. My entire life have powered through everything. I was kind of brought up with the idea that, okay, if something comes at you, you just deal with it. You just power through. You keep going. You don't give up. You keep fighting. You keep moving forward. You know, this type A type personality. And my body was giving me signals my entire life that it was stressed out. Stomach aches, hair, skin, nails. You know, I had acne, I had bloating, I had constipation, I had changes in menstrual cycles. And every time I would go to the doctor, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's normal. Yeah, you know, do you do a lot? Oh yeah, that's normal. And I just kind of kept powering through until my body couldn't power through anymore. And it gave me enough symptoms to where I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. There has to be something I could do. And oddly enough, and ironically, I had been treating people for adrenal fatigue, you know, for years, and then found myself going, oh my gosh, I have adrenal fatigue. I'm completely powering through and helping everybody else and doing what I'm telling everyone not to do. And now my body has kind of come to a head. And so I really, in that moment, just said, all right, I'm taking some action. I'm going to start to treat my adrenals. I'm going to start to pay attention to my stress. And I saw such amazing results. And I have better energy than I've ever had in my entire life at 48 years old. I look better, I feel better, and I've been able to help countless people get to that point. And so I'm excited to dive in on all of this because there's so many stories that I could share. We could go on all day of experiences that I've had that I know your audience probably can relate to, with all of us just being those go-getter, we're going to try to do everything and control everything, when in reality what we really need to do is try not to control everything. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's the demise, and you don't realize it until it happens to you and you're like, oh man, I
Right.
fell victim to what I treat. How did that happen?
But equally as important as the other side of that coin, that is people who are overwhelmed easily, and that's another form of stress. So for the listeners who might not really know what the adrenal glands do and where the stress even comes from, like the whole sort of biochemistry tour of stress, take us down that path and share with us what midlife women need to know in terms of the adrenal glands.
Yeah. So, well, the adrenal glands are two glands that sit on top of your kidneys. And the way I like to look at it is they're basically in charge of, is this an emergency or not? What's going on in the body? Is this dangerous or not? So if we think about it this way, so if you're in the woods and you're going for a hike and you're just minding your own business and you turn around the corner and you see a bear, what does your body do? The heart rate goes up. You start to panic. All the energy in your body goes to running away from that bear and you go into crisis mode. How am I going to get away? How am I going to survive? Right? Ideally, you get away from the bear and you don't see another one for quite some time, and your body can recover and repair and go about your hike, and on you go. But in the society that we live in right now, there are so many bears and perceived bears. So the minute we see a bear, we get away from it, and then there's another one, and then there's another one, and then there's another one. So what's happening when you first see that bear is you're having a release of cortisol, which is stimulating a fight or flight reaction, right? Which is essentially our nervous system saying, whoa, no, there's a bear, we better run. So it down regulates everything that's restorative and repair worthy, our cellular health, our digestion, our mood, creation and, in creation and hormone metabolism, conversions, liver health, gut health, all these things that we need to stay healthy, sharp, and feeling great are downregulated when we're running from a bear. And that is our body adapting to stress over time. And we have put ourselves in an environment now where there's just a chronic stress over and over and over again. So our body is in a constant adaptation. And that's essentially where adrenal fatigue develops. At first, everything's great. You're running from every bear. You're superwoman. You're on top of it. Have you ever been in that situation? I was in my
Just a
20s.
little bit. I have 5
Yeah.
kids, so yeah,
Yeah,
just a
yeah, yeah.
couple times. Yeah. Yeah.
You just power through, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And people look at you and they're like, wow, you do everything. You're amazing. And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. And then all of a sudden you start noticing that your energy, your sleep-wake cycles, your mood, things are fluctuating. I call this the roller coaster phase. And this is where our body is starting to anticipate the next bear. There may not even be one there, right? But our body says, oh gosh, you know what? We've seen 5 bears over the last 2 days. There's going to be another one. We better prep. We better start diverting all the energy towards the next bear that's going to come. So what you start to see is symptom development. And this is when you go to the doctor, you're like, hey doc, I'm not feeling great. I'm tired. I'm having stomach aches. My hair is falling out. And they say, oh yeah, that's just normal. That's menopause, or that's perimenopause, or you just need to deal with it. And then when you don't, it continues to get worse and worse. More symptoms add on, more variations in symptoms. And what we really need to do is stop for a second and say, wait a minute, is our body spending more time in fight or flight than it is in our rest and digest phase? And there was a study that had come out a while back that said we're supposed to spend 80% of time in our calm nervous system, our parasympathetic nervous system, where we're healing and we're repairing. But we're actually spending 80% or more in our fight or flight. And I truly believe this adaptation that we've made to power through and get through everything and keep running from despair is actually the real key behind why we have so much disease in our country. For everything from cardiovascular disease to cancer to gut issues to mood issues, anxiety, depression, to early menopause or perimenopause, to all of these things that are starting to occur where we feel almost like our body is running without us. That's our bear running our body. That's our nervous system running our body. So I think it's really important for all midwife women to just sit back for a second and say, okay, could cortisol be behind this? And that is why I'm noticing all these symptoms. And what can I do about it? Because any therapy you do, from hormone therapy to nutritional therapy to herbs to lifestyle management, is only going to be improved by also really paying attention to what is my cortisol doing? And am I constantly running from a bear? And what actions can I take to minimize those bears or take a different route, away from it?
So this is a normal process. I mean, this is an
Mhm.
evolutionary process we've been, born to go through, right?
Mhm.
Have the high stress and then have the recovery.
Mhm.
When a woman is in midlife, does this process of recovering get harder because we have the hormone fluctuations?
I think it's a combination of hormone fluctuations, which I'd love to dive into. So we'll have to do that on how
Mhm.
cortisol impacts that. But cortisol also impacts how we produce energy, right? Where we use our energy and utilize our energy. So if you think of it this way, our body, if you think of it like a conveyor belt and it's making a product. So our product is energy. So along the way, we need things. A plus B goes to C, and maybe we need a little bit of selenium, a little bit of magnesium, a little bit of B vitamin, a little bit of progesterone, a little bit of estrogen, whatever we may need on this conveyor belt is
Mhm.
impacted by cortisol. So if we're missing pieces, right, our body can't produce the energy efficiently. And when it can't produce the energy, that makes it a lot harder for the body to help with some of the routine stuff like hormone management, right? So this all becomes an issue of the body becoming internally stressed out because of external stressors. We all know what our external stressors are. We could all name them. We complain about them to our friends and our family and whatnot. But what happens when you're constantly dealing with things on the outside is it has a direct impact on our hormone metabolism, direct impact on our nutrition, which also has an impact on our hormones, right? Direct impact on how we clear our liver toxins, how they impact us, which also has a direct impact on our hormones. So when we talk to midlife women and they say, oh, it's in the hormones, absolutely it is. The question then is it due to hormones just themselves, just this natural process with the ovaries, or is it due to toxins? Is it due to nutritional deficiencies? Is it due to cortisol driving this? And those are the things we need to be asking. And those are the things that aren't being discussed in most, medical offices in general. When women go in and say, I have hot flashes, or I have brain fog, I'm gaining weight, I'm losing my hair, I don't feel sexy, my libido is tanking, we immediately in the conventional world go to, oh, you must have no estrogen. You must have no testosterone, which might be true. But my question is why? Why? And are there other things that are playing a role? Because if you go and put hormones in and you're not paying attention to what cortisol is doing, the body can actually take those hormones and feed that bear instead of feeding you. And we want this to feed you so that you can get energy out of it and you can live the best life that you possibly can. And midlife doesn't become a problem. I'm in midlife. I love being in midlife. I actually think it's great. If I wouldn't have taken the time to heal my adrenal glands, though, I suspect I would have a very different opinion of that right now, right? As my hormones are shifting.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I don't think I've ever really thought about the connection between cortisol and the hormones like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, let's stay on that for a second. So you're saying that if all the things in your life are sort of lined up and you've got an optimal diet, you optimal sleep, optimal this, optimal that, we still, what do you mean by still have to know what's going on with our cortisol? Wouldn't our cortisol then at that point just be fine, just be normal?
Well, there's a couple things that we have that, if you're not mindful of it, will impact our cortisol that you might not think about. So, for example, our cell phone, this thing
Hmm.
attached to our hip all the time, every time it beeps, every time it buzzes, You know, I think a great example is, have you ever left your house without your cell phone?
Oh
And then,
yeah.
oh my gosh, oh my gosh, where is my phone? It's like the first
Yep.
thing you worry about, right? It's a
Yep.
phone, it's irrelevant, but we worry about it. So in our brain, we've already adapted to always be on, always expect that next thing, always be ready to communicate with everyone. You know, when we go without it and it's silent, we don't know what to do with ourselves. So there's already this pre-anticipated cortisol response that comes simply from a phone, right? So yes, you can eat right, right? And you can exercise. There's 4 things I look at: nutrition, movement, supplement, and mindset. And I think a lot of us really spend a lot of time saying, okay, we're really going to clean up our diet. We're going to move every day. We're going to take all these supplements that our doctor wants us to take. But we don't take the time to really figure out, how do we reset that ingrained anticipated response to the bear? So that's a really important concept that I don't think a lot of us pay attention to, because we've been conditioned to just keep running, to just keep going.
Yep.
And those routines that we've come up with to improve our lifestyle are awesome, right? It's great to have good
Mhm.
nutrition and to move and to take supplements. But if we're just doing them as part of the routine as we're running from the bear, we're not going to get as much efficacy out of it. So we have to pay attention. Is cortisol truly in a correct rhythm, right? And if we're still having symptoms, I would like to argue that it probably isn't, right? If we're having symptoms that we're saying, oh, we're almost there, but gosh, I'm still bloating, or that weight just isn't coming off, or my hair is still really thin, or I'm noticing a lot more wrinkles, you know, my thyroid's a little sluggish, things like this, we need to look at, is it possible that cortisol is being triggered and you're not aware of it being triggered? We've adapted to that quite well. In fact, that's the coolest thing about our body. That's like what got me into endocrinology to begin with, is that in a
Mhm.
moment's notice, we can shift everything in our favor to save our lives. We can take from progesterone and turn it into cortisol. We can move we can shunt hormones to another pathway in order to save our lives, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But if we're doing that all the time, it's no wonder our hormones are out of whack. It's no wonder we have more estrogen dominance. It's no wonder we have more hormone related cancers. There's all these things going on that I believe are really driving into this amazing technology that we've created in our lives to supposedly make it easier, but it's
Mhm.
actually causing a lot of complications with our natural body's ability to heal.
Yeah. You know, when you were talking about the cell phone, I was thinking, when I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones. I
Right.
mean, I think my dad was like the first person in our neighborhood to get a cell phone, and it
Mhm.
weighed like 3 bricks. It was huge. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This huge box, right?
Yeah.
And I was, well into like 16, 17, 18 when that happened. So yeah, we've been conditioned to have all of these bears. Some of the bears just happen, and other bears we create, and we're pretty good at it. So you mentioned how to start really honing in on cortisol and really addressing what's going on. How do you even start to do that? Because some of these symptoms you're talking about are the same symptoms that women face in perimenopause. So how do you know it's peri? How do you know it's
Yeah.
cortisol? It's probably a combination. Where do you start?
Yeah, I think it's really important to get a full lab workup of the entire endocrine system. So when I say endocrine system, I mean our hormone system. There's essentially 4 parts of that. There's your sex hormones, right? Your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, maybe your DHEA might fall into that, but adrenal hormones, I would say more DHEA and cortisol. And then we have our insulin and glucose regulation, and then we have our thyroid. So if you have and if you notice, if I could call it perimenopause, I could call it hypothyroidism, I could call it adrenal fatigue, I could call it metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance, the symptoms are the same, right?
Yeah.
Because it's an
Yep.
imbalance in the endocrine system. That's just what it is. So you can't look at one area without also looking at the other areas, because they play into each other, right? If the adrenals are running from a bear and you don't have enough selenium, that's going to have an impact on your thyroid. You're not going to convert your thyroid hormone well, right? If you're not converting your thyroid hormone well, that's going to have an impact on your energy production, right? Which causes more stress to the body. So now adrenals are stimulated again. So they may say, you know what? I'm going to pull from progesterone a little bit to make up for this problem, right? And then we have an imbalance now in estrogen and progesterone. Then we start getting symptoms. Then when we run our hormones, they say, wow, you're low in progesterone, right? And you could say,
Yeah.
I'll take progesterone, but what if you're low because cortisol took it? If you give more progesterone, that feeds cortisol, right? And that can also, cortisol has a direct impact on your insulin. So we can get into blood sugar management, which is also key in running from a bear and producing energy. So the key is you have to look at all of these and balance them against each other and really seek, where's the root? What are the things that happen next? If you think of the body like an onion, and you have a root cause and it has all these layers that go on the outside, we have to start evaluating layers and working through them
Mhm.
one at a time. And sometimes you go to put something in, let's say you put in progesterone and you feel worse. You know, we have to listen to our body. We have to start reconnecting with our body and say, this isn't working. It doesn't mean we need more. It means we're missing something. There's a layer of the onion we need to pay attention to. And
Yeah.
I find cortisol is almost always somewhere in that root. It has to be, because we don't slow down, right? I mean, you have 5 kids. I have 2 kids. I run 2 businesses. You know, I've had a lot of family. You know, I've lost my mom. I've lost my dad. I've had a lot of grief throughout my life that I've had to deal with internally. A lot of things just with my background that I've had to face with me, mindset changes I've had to make. And this is all an evolving thing. I'd be more than happy to share my lab list with your audience. If you remind me afterwards, I can give you a link and they
Oh,
can download
great.
it. And it
Thank
is
you.
it is a list of kind of a starting point of what I run on everyone from the get-go. And it's everything from blood count to metabolics to nutritional to the entire endocrine system, looking at all 4 different parts. And then when you sit down with somebody who understands the biochemistry, you can actually see where those are and trace it. And that's why they call me the adrenal whisperer, right? Because I can look at these numbers and I can say, oh, the problem's here. Right.
Yeah.
Let's start by supporting there, see what happens. There have been
Right.
numerous women who have come to me with horrible hot flashes saying, I'm in perimenopause, I need hormones. And all I have done is downregulated their cortisol response at night, and their hot flashes have gone away. And when we look at their hormones, they're in decent balance. They're not way out of whack, but they feel like they're out of whack. So if you're out there and you feel like you're out of whack and you're being told everything is fine, it's because we're not looking at enough, right? There is something out of whack. We just have to find it and trace it, support it, manipulate it slightly, and then listen to the body and what it tells you to do. One of the things that I have noticed in my career of really looking at adrenals is that as we're under more stress, we become more disconnected with ourselves and our heart, like our head becomes disconnected with our body, but also to each other. We start withdrawing. We're not really, asking for help. We start to think we can do it all ourselves, and we withdraw from our friends. We withdraw from society. We become more anxious. We become more depressed, and we really stop listening, or we're misunderstanding what our body's trying to say to us. And we start putting our bodies down. And nothing like pains my heart more than a woman saying, I hate my body, or I don't, it just
Yep.
pains me, because there's so much beauty in the process of health and just evolving and realizing that sometimes it just isn't great. Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't feel great today, but I'm alive. I'm
Right.
here. I'm able to try to reconnect with my body. I can take some small steps today to improve my mood, to improve my health. And those are all wins. Those are wins in my book. So
Yeah.
a little bit more self-love makes me happy when I see people just grab that and say, is there anything I can take away from this? It's that your body is trying to tell you where the problem is. And sometimes we just have to take a deep breath, listen to the body, find a provider that's going to work through it and help us get there, and trust the process. And that's really, really hard for a hardworking, strong-willed type A woman to grasp
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
It is, because in this midlife phase, a lot of women, like you were saying, sort of pull back from their community that they once
Yeah.
had. We're becoming better at talking about all of these sexual issues, and going through menopause and these, you know, multiple physiological changes that we're all going through. And it can be a very lonely place. And
Oh,
so
totally.
that community is really a strong component to this equation. I want to dive into the impact of this chronic stress that you're talking about, this high cortisol level, this adrenal fatigue. Um, How so many women during this phase are also gaining a lot of weight around their
Mhm.
midsection. They're putting on not just adipose fat, but that visceral fat, which we know is very dangerous.
Yep.
And that leads to feelings of, you know, hating your body.
Yep.
Like this is not my body. It doesn't fit into my clothes. It doesn't move the way I used to move. I don't have my libido. I don't, want to be touched by my partner. I don't, if I'm a single person, I don't really want to go out on the dating scene. Right? All these things come to play. How does cortisol, chronic high levels of cortisol, this adrenal fatigue,
Mhm.
impact our ability to lose weight?
Yeah. So if you were running from a bear every single day, right? Your body needs fuel. So it says, I've got to figure out how to have fuel. So one of the adaptations that it makes is it prompts insulin to store more fat around the midsection. And it does this because fat is an energy burning machine, right? So it
Yeah.
says, you know what? I'm going to protect this woman and I'm going to give her a little bit more because here's the thing, we don't always have time to eat. And in fact, I would guess that if a woman's gaining weight, what we tend to do and what we learn to do is eat less, right?
Yes.
Starve ourselves. And so we're starving
Hmm.
ourselves and our body saying, dude, there is a bear. Like, I got to run. If you're not going to give me nutrition, I've got to pack it on. And so, and I mean, I learned this. I grew up in the modeling industry. And from the time I was born, it was like, eat nothing, be skinny, worry about what everyone thinks about you. And I think so many of us women have grown up with that, restrict, restrict, restrict in order to be pretty, which is a shame because it actually puts our body into such a stress response on its own. If it doesn't have enough fuel, it's going to save your life. And here's a perspective shift here, because it's frustrating because you feel very alone and you feel ugly, right?
Yes.
But your body's doing that to save your life. So there's a moment of gratitude there, right?
Mm.
That needs to happen. First of all, yes, I have some extra weight here, but I just want to take a moment to thank my body for helping me through these times of stress because it's saving my life. Because the alternative is the bear, right? So the body does this to save you. So this is a long-term thing. So often I'll see women say, well, I've done this diet, I exercise every day, the weight isn't coming off, and they're expecting by following a diet for 8 weeks that the body will lose that weight. I find if cortisol is involved, it's going to take a lot longer
Yeah.
because the body has to be certain that there is not a bear. So if you're anticipating every bear, if you lay down to go to sleep and you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night for no reason, right? Your body wasn't really sleeping. It was thinking, where's the bear? There was the last bear. Oh, what's the bear tomorrow? What's my appointment like tomorrow? What do I have to do? So we actually have to really use the mindset piece to take that fear of the bear away from our body. And that's when I see women really start to lose weight. And if they have really given themselves true proper nutrition, movement, supplementation, maybe they're doing hormone therapy, they're doing all the things right. If they've been doing all that, it works so much faster when the body finally says, oh, I don't have to worry about this anymore. The weight comes off so much faster. And I see that in adrenal fatigue, I'll see they'll hold for a really long time and then they'll drop like 5 pounds and then they'll hold for like 3 months and then they'll drop because the body's like, are we really okay? Okay, hang on. I'm just going to hold on. It's a protective mechanism. So if we look at the body in that way, I find it helps women be a little bit more patient in the process and understand what's happening in their body as we go through this process. But there is a direct impact for us to keep on weight so that we can run from the bear.
God, Dr. Trisha, I really love that you just mentioned this whole notion of having gratitude for your body
Mhm.
saving you.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that, but as soon as you said that, I like had this virtual hug, just gave myself a hug too because I was like that makes so much sense and it's giving us a chance to slow down, calm down the noise and just sort of take a deep breath and come up with a plan of how to incorporate more mindfulness into our lives with in whatever arena it is, whether it's, you're over exercising or you're not sleeping or you're in a bad relationship or you're not enjoying your work anymore, whatever it is. We got there for a reason and our body is now signaling us, hey, slow down and let's come up with another plan.
Yeah, can I share a personal story on that?
Yes,
I think
please.
it really brings it home. So, um, my mom and I were very close, and she was diagnosed with cancer, and I was running a busy practice, seeing tons of patients, pushing myself too far, adrenal fatigue to the max. and her cancer started to take over, and I powered through and did everything. I stayed as a mom. I stayed as, I was still working as a model at the time. So I was like trying to eat right and do everything right. And I was seeing a practice and, young kids and family. And the cancer moved pretty quickly in her at that time. And it was about a month before she passed, and she was at my house. And this was a game changer for me. I'm sitting on the bed and I said, Mom, knowing that she's probably not going to be here much longer, I said, do you have anything in your life that you regret? Anything?
Mm.
And she said, I have one regret. And I should preface this by saying she was a very well-known fashion model. So her entire life was in that world. And she said to me, she said, the one regret I have is that I wouldn't have spent so much energy and time wishing for that 10 pounds to come off, because I would
Mm.
give anything right now to have that 10 pounds. She couldn't walk to the bathroom by herself. She was so wasted she was 90 pounds, 5'10", didn't have the strength in her legs to walk to the bathroom by herself, couldn't drive, couldn't go to the grocery store, couldn't make herself food, needed assistance with everything. And her one regret was, if she wouldn't have worried about that 10 pounds, she would have probably 10 more pounds now, and maybe she'd be able to go to the bathroom by herself. And I think we forget, because all day we run around and we do 1,000 things, and we always say, oh, I have to go to the grocery store. Oh, I have to pick up my kids. Oh, I have to stop. I have to get to this meeting. And I don't think we spend enough time really saying, wow, we get to go to the grocery store. And even though we may be 10 pounds heavier, 20 pounds heavier than we want, we have the physical strength to get in the car and drive somewhere. We have the mental capacity to talk to someone on the phone. I mean, she had moments, the cancer had spread to her brain, and there were moments where she couldn't hear because it was pushing. She couldn't hear anything. She couldn't interact with her grandchildren because she didn't know what they were saying, and we spend so much time worrying about all these little things, when in reality, there's a lot of gratitude to be had. And that was the moment where I changed my life. That is the moment where I said, I am no longer going to beat myself up over 5 pounds, 10 pounds. If I wake up bloated, I'm going to start listening to my body. If I don't feel well, I'm going to pay attention. I'm not going to push myself to the limit. I'm going to focus on me. And I went back to dance, which is something that I loved as a kid. And if you love watching dancing, follow me on social media, because that's where I do it. I went back to dance. I started really spending quality time with my children. I stopped saying have to and started saying get to,
Mm.
and really started to hone in on, what does Trisha need to be happy in this life? What brings me joy? And close out the things that don't bring me joy, and start really honing in on, what are my hormones doing? What is my nutrition? Am I serving myself well? Am I spending too much energy worrying about things that are literally out of my control? I mean, when you're running from a
Yeah.
bear, we can't control our weight as easily. We just can't. We have to start focusing on, what is the bear? Can we turn that bear into a bear cub? I mean, if you walked
Mm.
around the corner and it was a little cute little cub, you would
Mhm.
react differently than if it's this big roaring bear, right?
Right.
It could be
Right.
the same thing, but how we perceive it matters. And I was going through life perceiving it like I had control over all this stuff. And oh, woe is me. Here's a problem I have to deal with. And when I changed the lens on how I viewed that, it made a massive, massive impact. I bet she would have taken 30 pounds in that moment,
Yeah.
anything to be able to go to the bathroom by herself. I don't know if that helps bring it, bring that story close to home for people, but these things we go through are to open our eyes to something that maybe we need to pay a little bit more attention to. Maybe we're
No,
not.
I think it's a
Yeah.
great way to close the story. And thank you so much for sharing that personal story with us. I think there's a lot of golden nuggets in there. One is, a lot of women on this journey called menopause,
Yeah.
um, really struggle with, we're dialed into social media and reading these books by amazing authors, like yourself, right? We want to get all the data. We want the science-backed, science-driven data so we can put it into play. But if you're someone who is starting at a point where it's going to be overwhelming, it
Mhm.
might put you in a position to not even start at all, right?
Yeah,
And so
100%.
that
Yes.
that's the stress, that's the adrenal fatigue, also the the just the anxiety of not knowing how to start it can cause that chronic stress day in and day out for yourself. And I also think one of the other nuggets from your share is that there are no mistakes. That while a lot of us women on this journey think we're making mistakes, we've put on 5, 10, 12, sometimes 35 pounds, and it was a big mistake. To me, there's no mistakes. These are all learning moments and opportunities where we get to do
Yeah.
something different. So I really like,
Yeah.
and mindfulness plays such a huge role in chronic stress.
It's
Um,
huge.
it is absolutely huge. I want to
It's
dive in.
essential, actually. You can look at
Yeah.
all these protocols and people say, oh, and don't get me wrong, I use these herbs too, but they could say, oh, well, take ashwagandha, take rhodiola. Oh, just take this adrenal gland. Oh, just do this and you'll get better. If you don't change the way you view the bear, you can only get so far. It's essential. You have to. And that's where I see the difference between people who heal from adrenal fatigue fully and people who don't. And when I say heal, you really can't, because there's always more stress coming on your body,
Right.
right? Menopause is stressful. When your hormones go away, that's stressful. The body goes, whoa,
Right.
I have this, right? So, but the more prepared you are to deal with that on an emotional and physical level, just both combined, the easier it's going to be to
Yep.
get to the bottom of it and for your body to communicate what it truly needs, because what we need changes. And especially in midlife, we have all these things moving around and we have all these things around us. I mean, I have a son who just started driving a couple of weeks ago. It's like, that's like added a whole new level of
Hmm.
stress to me. Right. But
Yep.
what a beautiful thing. Like, I try to look at it and go, gosh, what a beautiful experience he has to be experiencing that, rather than thinking, oh my gosh, is he going to get in an accident when he leaves? Because we're all guilty of that. We think the
Yeah, for
worst
sure.
immediately.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
we have to change it.
yeah, cortisol can be, high cortisol levels can be contributed to so many adverse things going on in terms of not sleeping,
Mhm,
our digestion. Let's talk about digestion for a
mhm.
second and cortisol, and then I want to move on. But
Yeah.
how does this dysregulated cortisol affect our digestion?
Yeah. So we have two nervous systems, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic is that fight or flight that we've already talked about, running
Right.
there. Parasympathetic is the rest and digest. So I said the word digest, right? So the
Yep.
body has to be calm and not in a threatened state to properly digest and absorb food, extract nutrients, create energy, repair our cells. So if we're always running from a bear and shoving food down our face, we're not absorbing the nutrients out of it. Our body can't. It can't sit down behind the tree and enjoy a sandwich if it's running from a bear. It just can't, right? So we have to be mindful when we eat. And one of the things that I've noticed, particularly in our culture, is we don't honor mealtime. Mealtime is something we have to have. We just whatever we can get quick. Let's go get a smoothie on the go. Even if it's healthy, we're doing it on the go, or we're doing it quick.
Hmm.
We're not sitting down and enjoying meals together. And some of the things that I love about other cultures, and you see this in the blue zones, people say, oh, it's the diet that they eat, and it may be, but I think more so it's that they make mealtime a community moment to sit
Mm.
down, to share, to talk, to slowly eat, digest their food, allow their body to actually absorb the nutrients from their food before we get up and run on from the next bear. And so one of the really quick things that you can do to actually help your digestion is start doing just that, taking meal times as a calm time,
Yep.
taking breaths before a meal. So, some of the simple things that some people do, like even saying grace for a meal, there's something about that too, just being thankful for the moment to be able to eat. um we cannot, the overarching theme is we cannot digest, absorb, or maintain our body if we're always running from a bear. So even if you're putting in the best food, when we're under stress, we have low stomach acid. We don't release digestive enzymes well. Our microflora, our whole, bacterial flora in our gut gets out of balance. These are all required for digestion, nutrition, for neurotransmitter balance. They're required for hormone metabolism and conversion. If you can't get B vitamins from your food, you can't convert hormones well.
Right.
You can't, get energy, during the Krebs cycle. So some of the nutrients that cortisol directly, just from being released directly, depletes are minerals like selenium, zinc, magnesium, B vitamins for sure, particularly B6, B12, folate.
Yeah.
All of these are required to maintain our hormone system, to produce energy. And then consequently, if you're under a bear, you're also not absorbing those from your food. So we start to see vitamin D deficiencies. We start to see, I mean, any of the minerals are pretty much
Yep.
depleted almost immediately. We don't have good mineral abundancy in our soil. So we have poor soil, poor food choices, you know, toxin laden foods, and we've got stress over here depleting the nutrients, right? And we're
Yep.
not sitting and enjoying our meals. So there's a bunch of different ways that stress alone can impact our digestion, cause bloating, cause constipation, which is huge, and weight gain, you know, and then we start to see nutrient loss, which in turn shows up in our vanity, right? Shows up in our hair, our
Yep.
nails, our
Yep.
skin, our hair starts falling out. We start breaking out like we're teenagers, you know, or we start getting tons of wrinkles or rosacea, our skin gets crepey because we don't have time to maintain that when we're under stress. And we also don't have the nutrients available to do so. Everything goes to running from the bear, everything.
Yep.
All those nutrients go there.
Yeah, such a great explanation of how those two are connected, and what a great segue into hair loss.
Mhm.
We're recording this just before August, and August is National Hair Loss Awareness Month, which is one of my favorite months because I've been on a hair loss journey for the past 25 years due to a partial thyroidectomy,
Yeah.
and which has been the root cause of all health issues for me.
Yeah.
And I live my life to grow my hair. Every waking moment, I make decisions based on, will this help my hair grow or will this not help my hair grow?
Yep.
That's how important it is to me.
Mhm.
And the whole nutrient absorption component to this is real, because if we cannot absorb nutrients, every hair follicle is like its own little microorganism, and it needs a lot of nutrients. And when we don't get oxygen and we don't get the proper nutrients, and you are predisposed to genetic hair loss, which I am because I've done the genetic testing,
Mhm.
plus stress can cause hair loss, like we're talking about, taking certain medications, like I take thyroid medications for 25 years. So all the in toxins, I'm a
Yep.
poor methylator because of my
Yep.
MTHFR mutation. So all of these things create this layered hair loss, just cesspool,
Mhm.
for lack of a better term, that if I make one wrong move, my hair is so sensitive, it's going to fall out.
Mhm.
And so I really love this connection because I worked really hard on stress. You know, about
Mhm.
8 years ago, I went through a separation and divorce, and I really noticed my hair loss then. And the funny thing about hair loss, well, it's not that funny, but it happens. And then you have to remind yourself what the heck happened 3 to 6 months ago,
Yeah.
because it's not an overnight thing. You don't have a stress and your hair doesn't come out the next day. It's
Mhm.
so I actually write down in a journal when I have something really important, whether it's good or bad, because good is also a stressor too. Moving is can be an exciting, positive stressor. You know, meeting someone new, getting married, whatever
Mhm.
it is. So I write it down on journal, because if I have a hair loss, if I have a hair shedding, I go back to my journal 3 months and I say, what the heck happened? And I know. So, but that helps me be calm about it.
Mhm.
I know how to turn it around. And so I just want to focus on the chronic stress and how that is correlated with hair loss, and why so many people struggle with this. Because in menopause, especially postmenopause, so something like 50 to 70% of the women will experience hair shedding, hair thinning, widening of the part,
Mhm.
volume loss, receding hairline, all of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love your practice of writing things down because it also takes 6 months for the hair follicle to really
Yep.
regenerate. So a lot of the times you're like, well, I'm taking all this stuff. And, you know, 2 weeks later, you're like, but it's not back. It takes time, right? This is a hair loss is a long journey, as you know,
Yeah.
or hair regrowth.
Yeah.
I think whenever there's hair loss, a very simple way to look at this is if the hair is falling out, there is a stressor on the body. Now, where the stressor is, it could be one stressor, it could be multiple stressors. I usually find it's multiple. So I want to define what that means, because we've already talked about external stressors, right? And you journal about them. Oh, I was divorced, or this happened, or whatever. And we can keep track of those. But what we don't always know are the internal stressors, right? So the internal stressors could be toxins, right? When someone goes through chemotherapy, all their hair falls out. Why? Because it's toxic, right? So there are environmental toxins, there's toxins in our food, there's the way that our liver is metabolizing those toxins. Like you talked about not being able to methylate, that is a genetic issue with clearing toxins from the body, with clearing even hormones from the body, which can cause hormone imbalances as well. So the key here is if you've been struggling with hair loss, stress is always involved because hair loss is a sign of stress on the body. The question comes down to, what is that stressor and what can I do to minimize the stressors, right? Because we don't always know. There's a multifactorial thing.
Yeah.
So that when a big stressor comes along that we can identify, an external stressor, our body is as equipped as possible as it can be in that moment to hopefully prevent less hair loss this time, right? Because it's always going to fall out when there's a stressor. So we talked about how it impacts, how stress impacts nutrition. Obviously, hair loss is highly linked to nutritional deficiency, and it could be any of them. So hormone imbalances, right? When hormones start to go up and down, anytime the body is in a roller coaster type phase where things are just moving all around, that is ridiculously stressful on the body. If that conveyor belt of producing energy can't produce energy, that is very stressful on the body. So we look into optimizing mitochondrial health, nutrition, lowering toxins in the environment, and helping to minimize the impact by changing the way that you view that bear, that mindset exercises, and really giving the body everything that it needs. You can't do this without looking at it, right? And doing like that big overview of labs, taking good intakes. What is my history? If you had stomach aches when you were a kid and you've never addressed them, they're just not, you just kind of gotten used to them, there's a problem somewhere in there, right? So going back in your history and really saying, what have I dealt with my entire life? How could I look into that? I will say though, what I have seen, because hair loss, this is just a side note on this, but because hair loss can be so detrimental to a woman, just with how it makes her feel, often we get so hyper focused on trying to fix it that sometimes that hyper focus of trying to find all the answers can cause more cortisol output, and more cortisol output causes more hair loss. So I think it's important to investigate and educate and do what you can, but there's also a point where, once again, you have to say, okay, have I done everything that I can do within my control? Am I giving myself proper nutrition? Am I doing my best to reframe and reset my mindset? Am I working with someone who's really doing their best to optimize my body over the course of time? Am I doing everything that I can? Yes. Well, then we have to just say, okay, this is what's meant to happen right now. This is this point in this process. There's nothing else I can do about it. And what I tend to find is when people let go a little bit, all of a sudden their hair starts growing back. And I see that a lot with, like even with fertility, people try and try to have a baby, and then they're like, oh, okay, I'm just not going to deal with this anymore. And bing, there's the baby, right?
Right.
So I do think it's important to learn all of this and understand how stress impacts different area of the body and identify all those stressors, balance the thyroid, balance the hormones, get all the nutrition in there. But there's also a moment of, okay, I am beautiful. I'm doing everything I can. I can't do much more at this time, and then just give it its time, because it takes 6 to 12 months to grow that hair back anyway, you know? So you could be doing everything right now. You just haven't seen the outcome yet.
No, I totally agree. And usually once a year or every other year, I go through a shed, and it's just something with my hormones that I do know because of all the blood work. And it could be really the testosterone converting to high DHT, because I am genetically predisposed to that as well. But this time around, when I did have a hair shed just about 6 months ago, I was so proud of myself. I looked in my journal. I knew that I had changed my dosage of my testosterone. My DHT in my lab showed higher. So I knew exactly what it was.
Yep.
And I stayed very calm because it's all fixable. It's all fixable. And I didn't wake up thinking about it the way I normally would have before that. So really utilizing stress techniques, whatever that means to you. And I want to talk about that before we end our podcast here. I'm not a meditator. You're not going to find me in a special room that I've devoted to my house with a pillow and a candle. That's not me. It's not my vibe. I know it works very well for a lot of people. I have to find my meditation practice elsewhere, so I wanted you to go over where are some places for women to start that really need something that resonates with them, that might be an out of the box type of calming situation for them, or technique.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the adrenal whisperer and I don't meditate either. So I'm a horrible,
I'm actually glad to hear that.
I really am not. But you know what I did? And this is my advice is look back at what brought you joy when you were a kid and do
Mm.
it. So for my mom, when she started to decline from cancer, she started painting again. And it brought her joy and it calmed her body down. And every time she was painting, she just kind of went into this creative space. For me, it was dance. So what do I do? And you would say, gosh, Trisha, you go and you push your body beyond its limits in hip hop class 4 hours a week. That's stressful. It's actually not for me because in that moment, I'm connecting with something where I'm 100% in. I'm not thinking about work. I'm not thinking about the things I have to do at home. I'm 100% trying for my brain to tell my arm where to go, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
100% in that moment. I'm laughing. I'm having fun. There is so much value in laughing and finding things that you enjoy doing that stimulate the right side of the brain. Because we spend plenty of time in the left side of our brain. We spend plenty of time worrying, agonizing, planning, trying to do this. We don't spend a lot of time just enjoying the flow. So my advice is what gives you that flow, that moment where you're just like, I could just do this all day long. And usually it goes back to what did we do as kids? I danced as a kid. My dad was a musician. When I hear music, I smile, I sing along. And those are things that are really important to me. And that's actually what reduced my stress more so than trying to meditate, which drives me nuts. I hate quiet rooms. I've never loved quiet rooms. When I was little, when I did my homework, all even through med school, I always had music on in the background. If it was quiet or someone said we're going to meet in the library, that's when my brain went. You know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So find those things that really connect with. I'm curious what yours is if it's not meditation.
Oh God, you're probably gonna laugh. I love cooking and
Yeah,
baking.
yeah,
So
great.
when I like to be in the kitchen, I like to have people in there with me, if they're, my kids don't live at home anymore. So when they're home, yeah. But for the most part, when I feel really stressed with work, I will go in and I will create a recipe.
I love that too. I cook as
Mhm.
well. I love it. I used to cook with my grandmother all the time. And
Mhm.
that's another thing. Like, what made you happy when you think back? Because we get so disconnected with what makes us happy, especially in our age group, just
Yeah.
because we're so busy doing so many other things and we're told what's supposed to make us happy
Right,
by
right.
other people, which is ridiculous. So, what makes you happy? What makes you smile? Go
Yeah.
do that every single day. And if you want to take it to the next level, reflect on it at the end of your day. How
Yeah.
did you feel? Write it down. Have gratitude for it, right? When I first went back to dance class in a class with 14-year-olds in an advanced hip hop class, I maybe got an 8 count of the choreography, maybe. And I went home and I was like, wow, I got 2 of those moves. That was fun. I'm going to go back next week and see if I can get 3 moves,
Yep.
And now I can do full advanced routines, 4 classes in a row. Like, so we build on it. It's the gratitude, it's the reflection, and it's just kind of allowing you to be silly, fun, to laugh, to bring things back in your life that you enjoy. That starts to minimize the bear. The bear starts to become cuter. Because I'll tell you, when I come out of dance class, I could walk in and my house could be a complete disaster and the kids could be fighting and this. And I'm just like, oh, hey, like
Yeah, yeah.
it
So
doesn't
I,
phase.
I I love this part of the conversation, Dr. Tricia, because I work with a lot of women who talk about recreating their life now. They have the second, the last final, this is the final third of our life,
Yeah.
right? Once you're in menopause, you got a third left.
Yep.
And how do you want that to be? And
Mhm.
they all want to recreate some part of their lives and get rid of that stress and do things differently. When I grew up, my mom and my aunt, sisters lived next door to each other and we had a path between our homes. My
Yeah.
aunt was a very gourmet cook and my mom was a very practical cook. And
Yeah.
so if I didn't like what my mom was making, I'd go down the path and I'd go to my aunt's and I'd have the gourmet. And I remember getting up on the stool and watching her and watching my mom do their things, very different styles. And
Yeah.
I know that's where my love of cooking comes. And I do it in silence. I don't want the TV on. I don't want
Yeah.
music on. I really just want to be in the moment. And when my aunt passed away, I got some of her pans, her
Oh,
baking pans. So I bake in her pans. And it really just, while some women are like, oh my God, I hate baking. What are you
yeah.
talking about, Jill? Like getting in the kitchen, then you got to clean it up. It is so therapeutic for me. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. And so I've had this time when my kids have now grown out of the house where I can focus even more on it and take my time and calm the noise around me with all the things in menopause that are going, wrong, right? Like I have to work out harder to maintain my muscle mass. I have to be more on top of my hormones. I have to remember to take all my hormones and my supplements and make sure I get to sleep on time. It is a
You get to.
full-time. Yeah, yeah,
You
get
get
to.
to.
Thank you. But it can be
Yeah, it's a
perceived
full-time
as a
job.
full-time job.
Yeah. And I think even like, I always think, oh, on the working out more, we have to work out harder to keep our muscle mass. We do, but it can also be smarter, right? So I get a lot of workout out of dance. I can go to
Yeah,
Pilates. I don't have to push myself at the gym. I just have to be very mindful about if I were to go up a ladder and I fell, would I be able to catch myself? Would I break a hip? Little things like that. We forget that. But what is your long-term vision for your health? I want to be one of those grandmothers or great grandmothers that's going on Space Mountain when I'm 90 years old. I don't want that sign that says, don't go on this if you're over 80 to stop me, right? But I think everything that we do, every little action we take is putting something in our health bank. And we do that with our finances. We put a little bit aside for retirement. We pull something out of our paycheck. We save up for, quote, when we retire so we can travel and live this grand life. If you don't have health, you can't live that grand life. So
right.
what if every single day we just took one tiny little thing, just spent 15 minutes doing something we loved, just spent 10 minutes holding a plank or walking outside or practicing gratitude or choosing, when we're faced with two different meal options, choosing one that's a bit more nutritious than the other. These little tiny steps that we take every single day add up to more in the end than doing it all out perfectly all the time. And these are things that also reduce stress because we stop worrying about doing everything perfectly all the time. I
Right.
personally don't want to be perfect. I'm over it. When I retired from modeling, I was like, I don't want to ever hear the word perfect again. I want to be perfectly imperfect. I love who I am and the stupid things that I do at times and the mistakes that I make. I mean, that just makes me human. But it's those little things, those little that we view as imperfections that actually are opportunities to contribute just a tiny little quarter every time to our health bank. And in the end, that reduces stress and changes that bear into a cup.
I really love that. And that's such a great place to stop on. Change the big bear into the little bear cub. They're way cuter. Um, Dr. Trisha, thank you so much for joining me today on the Health Trip podcast and sharing so much wisdom about stress. First, the biochemistry, and then strategic ways that are joyous and fun to implement better ways of living our life during menopause. Anything that you want to share about your website? Do you have any resources there that women can go and check out that will help them on their journey?
I have so many resources, and drpingle.com has a blog. It has tons of articles on this, perimenopause, menopause, stress, thyroid, you name it. I also have a book, Total Health Turnaround, which just helps you understand in more detail how does stress impact every single area of the body, the heart, the hormones, the thyroid, the gut, so that some of the things that we touched on today, you can learn more about. But more importantly, I'm all about community and I'm all about connecting. And I think we need to come together and connect again. So come find me on social media, use it in a positive way, say hello, tell me where you came from so I can meet you. Let's dance together, let's laugh together, let's use it in a way that's positive rather than stressful. And I would just love to hear from you. So I just love hearing from new people and where they heard from me, what their journey is. So go share that.
Yeah. By the way, everyone, I have checked her out on her Instagram, and she does hip hop. So, if you need some new moves in midlife, Dr. Trisha is a wonderful resource for that. So, thank you so much again. There are so many golden nuggets here, way beyond what I thought we would get to. So, what a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Lifestyle changes can be hard and overwhelming to make. By building your support team of functional medicine doctors, therapists, and health coaches, you can reach your optimal health goals. Be sure to check out my other podcasts. Until we meet again, stay healthy.